Hey guys, tonight we're taking a journey back, way back, to a time before cars, before Google Maps, before even the idea of socks with sandals was controversial. You're walking through the heart of the Roman Empire, and your sandals are flapping against gravel as the sun beats down. Ahead of you stretches something impossibly straight, a road that cuts across the land like it doesn't care what's in the way. Forest, mountain, swamp, nothing bends it. It just keeps going. And you're not just here to admire it. You're part of the team that's supposed to build it. You're sweating through your tunic, wondering how on earth this empire managed to lay thousands of miles of road with no drones, no Google Earth, and definitely no coffee. The land around you is dry, open, and scattered with shrubs that scratch your legs when you walk too close. There's a stick in your hand, not just any stick, but a surveyor's rod. And standing across from you, a fellow surveyor squints into the distance, lining things up with a gadget that looks like it belongs in a medieval chemistry lab. The first thing you're told is this: if it's not straight, it's not Roman. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're watching from somewhere fun, say, your couch, your bed, or a tent somewhere in Montana, drop your location and local time in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in the middle of the Italian countryside, somewhere in the 1st century BCE, and your job is to help start one of Rome's famous roads. You expected a shovel, maybe some stones. But instead, you're staring at a sacred chicken. Yes, before you even touch the dirt, a Roman priest has to approve the roads beginning through augury, interpreting the will of the gods by watching birds. The sacred chicken doesn't do much, just pecks at some grain, but apparently that's a very good omen. So the crew nods, the priest steps aside, and the work begins. The first people you meet are the agrimensors, the Roman land surveyors. These folks are the backbone of Roman engineering, and they take their straight lines very seriously. They're lugging around their most important tool, the groma, a wooden cross with plumb lines hanging down, sort of like an ancient D-square crossed with a wind chime. It looks suspiciously like something a bored child would make during arts and crafts. But don't laugh, they'll scowl at you. Your partner lines up the groma, plants it into the dirt, and starts measuring the land with grim focus. They sight along one of the arms, aligning with a marker in the distance, a pole someone stuck in the ground half a mile ahead. You squint into the haze and can barely see it. You're impressed. Also sunburned. The groma helps them draw what's called the decumanus, a perfectly straight line that's going to serve as the road's backbone. From there, other lines branch off, like a grid system, only created centuries before anyone thought of downtown traffic patterns. The Romans didn't just build roads, they designed networks. But here's the catch: that line has to stay straight. If there's a hill in the way, you dig through it. A swamp? You build over it. A village? Well, you politely explain to the villagers that the road takes priority. Because this road isn't just for merchants and donkeys. It's a show of Roman power, a literal stamp on the land that says, we are here. We are staying. And we do not zigzag. Historians still argue whether Roman roads were primarily military or economic, but in practice, they were both. The straightness wasn't just about aesthetics, it meant faster marching, quicker communication, and easier logistics. A Roman army could move faster than any other force of the time, partly because they didn't have to navigate curves. Even today, modern highways often trace the lines of old Roman routes, because, well, why mess with perfection? You wipe your brow and take a sip of warm water from a goatskin flask. Your supervisor tells you that the path is now officially staked. The markers are in place, the chicken said yes, and tomorrow, the actual digging begins. But tonight? You camp beside the line you just mapped. As the stars come out, you lie on the ground and trace that invisible road into the dark. Even before a single stone is laid, you can feel it stretching into the future. Funny thing is, Roman roads didn't always start with Roman land. Sometimes, the land was conquered first, and the roads came second. Sometimes, it was the opposite. Roads were like veins spreading out from Rome's heart. The more the empire grew, the more roads were built, straight as arrows and stubborn as senators. The ground underneath you is dry and full of rocks. Your blanket is scratchy, and your neighbor's snoring like a legionnaire after wine. But somehow, you're comfortable. You're part of something big. Something that will outlast your bones, your camp, and even that bossy guy with the groma. And somewhere out there, past the dark hills, The road is already waiting for you. Morning comes with the low clank of metal on stone and the unmistakable scent of sweat, dust, and very strong goat cheese. You're up before the sun has fully broken over the hills, rubbing the stiffness out of your legs. The survey line you and your team drew yesterday stretches out like a ghostly scar on the land, and now it's time to give it bones. Your first task? Master the ancient Roman version of GPS. Which is to say, tools that look suspiciously like sticks tied together with string. You pick up the groma again, and this time you try to actually use it. There's something deeply humbling about aiming a plumb line at a distant stake while a veteran surveyor watches you like a hawk judging a fledgling. You step forward, adjusting the angle, squinting like a pirate without an eye patch, and eventually mutter, "Straight enough?" The only reply is a grunt. Not exactly encouraging, but you're learning. The groma is genius in its simplicity. 4 arms at right angles, each with a dangling plumb line, allow you to establish perfect 90-degree cross lines. You plant it in the ground and use it to verify that the road's direction hasn't drifted by even a few feet. Because when a road is supposed to run straight for 30 miles, a few feet off at the start turns into an embarrassing zigzag halfway through. Next up, the core base. It's essentially a long wooden beam with a built-in water level. It looks like something someone might balance drinks on at a garden party, but it's surprisingly effective. Using the surface tension of water in a shallow trench carved into the wood, Roman engineers could determine gradient with remarkable precision. This thing helps keep the road level, or at least evenly sloped for drainage. You drag the core baits across the measuring line while someone calls out levels. It takes hours. And your arms are killing you. But by the end, you feel like you've developed a sixth sense for topography. You can almost smell when the land is rising, even if it's just an inch. Historians still argue whether the Romans borrowed these techniques from earlier civilizations like the Greeks or Etruscans, or whether they invented them outright. The truth is probably both. Romans were expert plagiarizers. If someone else built it first, Rome just added straight lines, a little marble, and claimed it as innovation. As the sun climbs, so does the temperature. Your team pauses for a break and you chew on something vaguely bread-like while watching a pair of engineers argue over whether a small bump in the path counts as a problematic deviation. Spoiler, it definitely does. By now, you've come to respect the obsessive precision involved in just planning a Roman road. These weren't just shortcuts through the countryside, they were strategic arteries of movement. Roman emperors, especially Augustus, poured money and manpower into road building not just to move troops, but to move messages. They had something called the cursus publicus, a state-run courier system, with relay stations along these roads. Messages could travel over 100 miles in a day, assuming no one stole the horses or passed out from heat exhaustion. You walk the path again in the afternoon with a different tool, a dioptra. Think of it as a proto-theodolite, basically a fancy Greek telescope mounted on a tripod. Roman surveyors used it for more advanced angles and measurements, especially over long distances. And honestly, it's kind of cool. You peer through it and can see the marker at the far end of the field with surprising clarity, like a tiny human ant waving his arms. Your supervisor leans over your shoulder. "That's your line," he says. "Don't lose it." And you don't. Every tool, no matter how rustic or weird, helps etch that invisible path deeper into your brain. You feel a little bit like a human compass. There's a quirky tidbit no one tells you at the start. Roman surveyors sometimes carried small altars or charms to bless their equipment. One guy has a carved little Mercury figurine dangling from his belt for accurate direction. Another swears by the luck of wrapping his plumb line in wool from a black sheep. You don't ask questions. You just hope your groma doesn't tip over during wind gusts. By evening, the whole crew is glowing with sunburn and smugness. The line is triple-checked. The angle of incline has been confirmed. The tools are packed away in leather bags that smell strongly of vinegar and thyme. You stare at the blank land ahead. There's nothing there yet, no gravel, no stone, not even a trench. But you feel the road now, humming under your feet. Not literally. That would be alarming. But still, the sense is there. You've walked its ghost. You've measured it, stared through it, argued over it. And tomorrow, you'll start digging. That night, under the stars, someone pulls out a pipe and hums a slow tune. The groma sits nearby like a patient bird on a perch. And the wind brushes the hills like it's tracing your line, giving you a quiet, invisible high five for a job obsessively, mathematically well done. Dawn breaks with the sound of shouting, clattering metal, and a donkey screaming in protest. So, basically, a typical Roman construction site. Today, The surveyor's work is done. You're now joining the brawn of the operation, the actual road builders. Which, in Rome, means a mixed bag of soldiers, slaves, local laborers, and one guy who insists on eating onions like apples. He's been assigned to your team. Lucky you. You're handed a spade, rough-hewn and heavy, and directed to the starting point. There's no ceremony, no rousing speech. Just a gruff legionnaire barking, dig straight, or dig again. Charming fellow. The first trench being dug is what Romans call the auger. It's the raised embankment that forms the foundation of the road. This isn't some random ditch, it has to be deep, straight, and slope ever so slightly for drainage. You start scooping earth, and it's immediately clear, Roman road building is as much about brute force as it is about brainy math. Next to you, a few unlucky souls are clearing the land of trees and stumps. If you're hoping that Romans worked around nature, think again. Roman engineers looked at a dense forest and thought, great place for a road. Let's chop the whole thing down and flatten it. That's the level of determination you're working with. And it's not just trees. That hill up ahead? It's getting chopped in half. That stream over there? Diverted. That temple in the way? Well, let's just say the gods might need to relocate. You pause for water, lukewarm, slightly vinegary water, and wipe the sweat from your forehead. Some of the men are already shirtless, their tunics tossed aside as they grunt through the earth. It's hard not to admire the sheer human effort it takes to move literal tons of soil with nothing more than hand tools and stubborn pride. You overhear a conversation between two soldiers about how they're building this road for a march next year. The legions need to move fast, and straight roads mean fewer ambushes, fewer delays, and better supply lines. You nod along. This isn't just infrastructure, it's control, speed, power. It's the empire pressing itself into the land like a stamp on wax. There's something hilariously Roman happening about 50 paces ahead. Two men are arguing over a rock. Not a big one, just a medium boulder, barely the size of a sheep. But one insists it's in the way and must be dug out entirely. The other argues it can be buried deeper and left in place. A third man walks up, listens for 2 seconds, and says, "We'll split it." Then he smashes it with a hammer and moves on. Problem solved. The Roman way. Historians still argue whether Roman road crews were mostly military-led or civilian contracted, but in practice, it was often a mix. In newly conquered territories, Rome used local labor, voluntary or not, to handle the hard work, while soldiers oversaw everything. That meant road building doubled as both punishment and discipline. You trudge beside a mule-drawn cart loaded with tools, shovels, picks, chisels, hammers, and baskets for hauling stone. The tools are primitive but effective. And you quickly learn that pacing is everything. Go too fast and you burn out by midday. Too slow, and that onion-eating guy starts trying to motivate you with folk songs. The road itself is slowly taking shape. Where yesterday there was just grass and dry shrubs, today there's a long, shallow trench. The slope is subtle but deliberate. Romans didn't just think of the road surface, they engineered it from the ground up. Nearby, a centurion marks out the next section with chalk and wooden stakes. The chalk keeps smudging. He keeps swearing. It's oddly comforting. A French fact you overhear during the lunch break, while chewing on cheese that tastes suspiciously like regret, is that some Roman engineers used urine to soften rocky soil. Whether it worked or just smelled awful is still up for debate. You sincerely hope no one tries it here. The afternoon is hotter, and your muscles are feeling it. Your hands are blistered, your feet ache, and you're pretty sure there's a rock permanently embedded in your sandal. But you keep digging, keep lifting, keep hauling. Because here's the thing, when you're this close to the bones of a Roman road, you start to understand what they were really doing. They weren't just moving armies. They were reshaping the world to their vision. Making the earth itself conform to their grids and measurements. The roads had to be straight not just for convenience, but because it proved Rome could force nature to obey. By dusk, you've helped carve a few hundred feet of clean trench. Dust clings to your skin. The sunset paints the horizon in golds and purples. And behind you lies the start of something that, if you're lucky, or unlucky, will last long after you're gone. The road crew gathers around a small fire. Someone passes wine that tastes like sour plums and vinegar. You drink anyway. Because after today, you've earned it. Your back aches, your legs twitch with exhaustion, but your heart feels strangely proud. You lie down next to the trench you helped shape. The stars overhead shimmer. The road below waits for more. And as you drift toward sleep, Someone jokes that tomorrow you'll meet the stone layer, a man who can flatten granite with a hammer and a sigh. You almost believe it. The sun isn't even up yet, but someone's already yelling about omens. Again, you blink sleep out of your eyes to see a Roman priest standing dramatically in the half-light, robes flapping like a crow with a flair for theatrics. Around him, a small group gathers silently. You follow suit, still groggy, wondering why the day's work has to start with poultry. Ah, yes, the rituals before the rocks. You remember now. No Roman road begins without a nod to the gods, and this one's about to get particularly feathery. The priest holds up a chicken. It's alive, agitated, and flapping like it has somewhere better to be. A few feed pellets are scattered on a tray. All eyes are on the bird. It pecks. The crowd exhales in relief. That's a good omen. If it hadn't pecked, if it had refused to eat or done something weird like drop dead, everyone would have had to wait for another chicken. Possibly another day. Romans took these things seriously. And who are you to argue with divine poultry? Once the chicken finishes its performance, another ritual begins. A bull, draped in garlands, is led to the starting point of the new road segment. You avert your eyes for the next part. It's not exactly bedtime story material, but suffice to say, the bull gives its life to the gods of roads and boundaries. The priest inspects the bull's entrails, nods solemnly, and declares the spirits are pleased. Someone claps. It feels inappropriate. You're then invited, encouraged, really, to walk behind a sacred plow. It's pulled by a white ox and guided along the intended line of the road. This symbolic act cuts the earth, marking it as claimed for construction. You take your turn awkwardly holding the wooden handles, trying not to trip, as your fellow workers murmur their approval. Historians still argue whether these rituals were sincere religious practices or just state-sanctioned propaganda to keep the workforce obedient and morale high. Honestly, after seeing how seriously everyone treats it, especially the part where a guy cried when the chicken ignored his feed, you're leaning toward probably both. Once the sacred boundaries are set, it's time for another round of measurement. You notice something odd. The supervisor now carries a small bag of salt and sprinkles a pinch at each corner marker. You ask why. He shrugs and says, "Keeps away bad luck." And ants. You're not sure which is more important. With the blessings complete, the crew shifts into high gear. But not before breakfast, a hearty mix of barley porridge, dried figs, and regret. You chew slowly while reflecting on the sheer effort it takes just to start a road. What's wild is that Romans had a whole branch of belief built around the concept of termini, boundary gods. These invisible deities protected milestones, borders, and roads. If someone tried to move or destroy a milestone, it wasn't just vandalism, it was sacrilege. You're not exactly religious, but after watching a guy mutter apologies to a roadside stone, you decide to be polite to the markers from now on. A fringe tidbit catches your attention. Apparently, in some parts of the empire, people buried coins or small offerings beneath the first paving stone of a road. Not for luck, but as a kind of offering to the spirit of the earth being disturbed. One engineer shows you a bronze coin stamped with a weird little horse. From Hispania, he says proudly, before pocketing it again like a lucky charm. As digging resumes, there's a new energy among the workers. Yesterday's exhaustion is still there, but today it's overlaid with a kind of reverence. The road is no longer just a construction project. It's sanctified, blessed, officially recognized by the gods and, more importantly, by the Roman bureaucracy. There's even a small group of villagers watching from a distance. Some look impressed. Others look suspicious. You hear whispers that this road will bring soldiers or cut through the olive grove. You don't blame them for being wary. A Roman road is a promise of order, yes, but also of conquest. Still, you focus on your task. Today you're helping mark the boundaries of a future mansio, a roadside station that will serve as a rest stop for travelers and messengers. It's nothing more than sticks and sketches now, but already someone's arguing about where the latrine should go. Priorities. You help line the central path using the same groma you've grown to love and loathe. The plumb lines sway gently in the morning breeze. You hold your breath as you lock eyes with the distant marker on the horizon. The line holds. Just barely. A few adjustments, and everything snaps back into place. Even the priest, now resting under an olive tree, nods in approval. There's something poetic about it all. Rome, the empire that seemed to stretch forever, built its roads one ritual at a time. Chickens, bulls, salt, plows, and sweat. It wasn't just engineering. It was identity. The straightness of the road wasn't just about efficiency, it was about control. About taming wildness. About drawing a line and saying, this, right here, is Roman. The sun rises higher. Shadows shrink. Your tools are warm in your hands. And as you take your next step along the marked path, you realize, the road may not be built yet, but in every way that matters, it has already begun. You wake up to the sound of picks striking rock, and the unmistakable rhythm of people trying to win an argument with the mountain. Today's task? Force the road through a hill that, frankly, doesn't want to be forced through anything. It's stubborn. It's jagged. And it definitely wasn't consulted about this whole Roman straightness policy. But your marching orders are clear, the road will not bend. So you stand at the foot of the incline, looking up at a slope dotted with boulders and scrub. The sun is barely up, but the rock already radiates heat. Your shoulders ache just from staring at it. Hope you like chiseling, says the guy next to you, already swinging his pickaxe with alarming enthusiasm. And so begins the Roman tradition of slicing a mountain in half, by hand. You're assigned to a team of diggers working a switch-off rotation, 10 minutes on, 20 minutes hauling debris, repeat until your soul leaves your body. There's no dynamite, no backhoes, no machines of any kind. Just iron tools, rope pulleys, sheer willpower, and the occasional profanity whispered under your breath, but it's methodical. The engineers mark vertical slices like someone's portioning a giant rock cake. You and your crew chip away layer by layer, prying loose stones and carrying them to carts waiting below. Mules bray and swish their tails impatiently, already loaded down with rubble. This isn't just brute strength, it's carefully coordinated engineering. Roman roads weren't allowed to meander around obstacles. Instead, engineers calculated precise cut-throughs, minimizing elevation changes and maximizing linearity. They hated switchbacks, hated curves, and absolutely despised detours. Historians still argue whether this obsession with straightness was more symbolic or practical. But today, it just feels sweaty. By midday, you're shin-deep in shattered rock. Your arms are jelly, your clothes are dusty, and your water skin tastes suspiciously like last night's fish stew. The hill looks exactly the same as when you started. Only now, you're in it. One of the engineers cheerfully tells you that in some extreme cases, like the Via Flaminia through the Apennines, the Romans would blast entire ridges apart or carve tight corridors through stone. He gestures to a diagram scratched in the dirt, proudly explaining how rain runoff is channeled down the sides using carved gullies. You nod, pretending to follow, but your brain is mostly focused on the possibility of passing out in the shade. Then comes the part no one warned you about. Tree roots. Dozens of them, thick as your wrist, snaking through the stone like angry veins. Roman policy? Cut and burn. You watch as someone sets a smoldering pile of olive branches at the base of a root cluster. The smoke curls upward. The roots hiss. You step back cautiously and make a mental note: never build roads through forests if you can help it. There's a fringe fact that seems appropriate as you cough through the smoke. Some Roman road crews reportedly sang while they worked, not military chants, but strange little work songs, often about wine, women, or how much they hated rocks. Your group gives it a try. The result is not great. But it makes the mountain feel slightly less massive. Late in the afternoon, you discover something strange buried in the rubble, a carved stone, half buried, with unfamiliar symbols. It's probably local. Maybe older than Rome. Maybe a boundary marker from a forgotten tribe. An engineer looks it over, shrugs, and says, "Leave it." Another whispers, "Bad luck to move sacred stones." You quietly wedge it deeper into the wall, just in case. By now, the cut through the hill is starting to resemble an actual path. Still rough, still uneven, but the line is clear. You can stand at one end and see clean through to the other. That's all the Romans ever wanted, a line you can follow without turning your head. One of the overseers, covered in chalk and sweat, pauses to take it all in. Rome wasn't built in a day, he mutters. But by Jupiter, it was built in a straight line. As the sun begins to dip, the whole crew gathers to clear the path. Debris is hauled out. The trench sides are smoothed. Someone even sweeps the surface with a pine branch like it's a royal carpet. The mood is tired, sore, and quietly triumphant. You sit on a boulder, legs dangling, watching the horizon line. The cut you just helped make slices the hill like a wound, but it's precise, controlled, Roman. And it's not just a road. It's a statement. A line that says, "We will go through what others go around." Back at camp, someone passes around boiled lentils and hard bread. The chatter is low and exhausted. But one guy, probably hallucinating, claims he saw the mountain flinch. Everyone laughs. You quietly agree. And before sleep claims you glance back at the darkened hill, now cleaved by Roman ambition. You smile, knowing that in the future, someone might walk this very road and say, "How did they make it so straight?" The answer: you did. With calloused hands, sore feet, and a complete disregard for nature's suggestions. By now, your arms are a little stronger, your sandals a little thinner, and your sense of personal hygiene. Well, let's just say nobody here smells like lavender. Today's task is the part people think of when they hear Roman road, the actual laying down of the layers. You're finally building the surface. The glorious, walkable, wheel-bouncing, soldier-marching surface. But first, like any good Roman, you have to start from the bottom. Literally. You stand at the edge of the trench, now widened, flattened, and blessed by half a dozen gods and one surprisingly effective chicken. The engineers call this base layer the stamen, and it's nothing glamorous. Just large, fist-sized stones laid flat into the earth like the road skeleton. The rocks are rough, uneven, and heavy. One slips out of your hands and crushes your toe. You do not bless that stone. The idea here is drainage and stability. Big stones on the bottom make sure water flows out instead of pooling and turning your road into a muddy slip and slide. Rome didn't get to rule the world by letting roads get soggy. You move slowly down the trench, helping lay the stamen stones while a man named Gaius lectures anyone within earshot about how this is the most important part. Actually, he's been saying this about every part since day one. Once the stamen is down, you move on to the rudus, a middle layer of crushed stones, gravel, and lime. This gets dumped on top of the big stones and then pounded down with heavy wooden mallets. The tools are called paviers, but you think backbreakers might be more honest. Historians still argue whether the rudus was always made with lime mortar or if that varied depending on region and budget. Either way, your arms don't care. All they know is pounding. You feel every thud in your teeth. The road may be getting smoother, but your joints are not. After several hours of compacting, a cart rolls up carrying nucleus, a finer layer of sand mixed with clay or ash. This is poured on and spread like icing. Except, of course, this icing gets pounded flat until it's denser than a legionnaire's poetry. You smooth it with a wooden board while someone yells at you about proper tamping angle. You tamp with vengeance. Then comes the final touch, summum dorsum, or the paving stones. These are large, flat slabs of volcanic rock or basalt, carefully chosen and sometimes even chiseled to fit like puzzle pieces. You'd expect this to go quickly, but no. Every stone must fit just right. Not too high, not too low, and definitely not wobbly. One ill-placed slab, and the next chariot that comes through might launch into orbit. You're partnered with a stone layer named Silvius, who moves like he's part of the rock himself. He taps each slab with his hammer, listens to the pitch, and nods when it sings just right. You try doing the same with your stone. It sounds like a goat sneezing. Silvius takes over. There's a strange beauty to it all. As the paving goes down, the road begins to look real. This isn't just lines and dirt anymore, it's structure. Order. Roman logic manifested in stone. Someone mentions the roads were crowned, gently arched in the middle, so water would run off to the sides. You hadn't noticed, but now that they say it, the curve is clear. Even in geometry, Rome was thinking long-term. A puddle is just a future pothole, after all. A French fact you overhear between shovel loads: some roads had red pebbles sprinkled along the edges as visual guides, especially near military zones. Others had white stones mixed in so they would gleam in the moonlight, Rome's answer to reflectors. Clever, and kind of poetic. By afternoon, the section you're helping with is starting to take shape. You glance behind you and see the clean, layered cross-section, stamen, rudus, nucleus, and summum dorsum. It looks like a layer cake made of geology and ambition. You step onto the new surface. It's solid, smooth, oddly satisfying. You walk a few paces and your footsteps echo slightly, as if the road is already remembering you. Just then, a cart rolls by, testing the surface. The wheels creak, the stones hold, and everyone watches like proud parents at a toddler's first steps. You wipe sweat from your brow and lean on your shovel. Your arms are trembling. Your tunic is dust-colored. But the pride? That's Roman. That's earned. The engineers chalk lines across the surface to mark where milestones and drainage ditches will go. You follow behind them, daydreaming about what it will be like to see a legion march across this thing. Or a trader hauling silk from the east. Or a lost goat, stumbling across the finest road in the known world with no idea what it's walking on. As evening falls, the light hits the paving stones at just the right angle. They shine. Not polished, but purposeful. You imagine the sound of 1,000 sandals marching in rhythm, echoing across this ribbon of stone. The road stretches behind you, silent and ready. You sit down, rubbing your hands, looking out over the straight line you helped finish. Somewhere down the line, another crew is doing the same thing. Somewhere behind you, a priest is probably still muttering at a milestone. And tomorrow, another layer begins, this time above the surface. But for now, you breathe in the dust, feel the stones beneath you, and smile. You didn't just walk a Roman road today, you built it. Your knees crack as you stand up from breakfast, a hard biscuit, some dried figs, and a lukewarm gulp of vinegared water, and stretch beneath the early morning haze. You're getting used to the aches. That lingering soreness in your shoulders? Feels almost familiar now. Like a road-building badge of honor. Today, you're assigned to something a little more decorative, at least at first glance. Milestones. Those tall, stubby stone pillars that dot Roman roads at regular intervals, standing like silent gray shepherds along the highway. You've seen a few already, some fresh, others cracked and listing to the side, partially buried in weeds. But you didn't realize how much effort went into erecting them, or how annoying they are to get just right. The Roman word for them is milliarium, and they're placed roughly every 1,000 paces, just under a modern mile. Seems simple, right? Drop a rock, carve some letters, call it a day? Oh no! Not in Rome. Your first task is hauling one of the new pillars into place. It takes 4 people and a stubborn mule to drag the thing up a slight incline. And even then, you tip it once and nearly crush someone's foot. It's heavy, uncooperative, and seemingly insulted that it has to stand upright. Once it's finally upright, after much grunting, shoving, and rotate it. No, the other left. Your team braces it with temporary wooden supports. You step back, proud. And then watch it slowly begin to lean right into the drainage ditch. There's a groan of dismay. Someone swears in Latin. A cart driver nearby actually applauds, sarcastically. You reset. This time, you help dig a deeper base, layer it with rubble, and wedge the milestone in tighter. You learn that Roman engineers sometimes poured pozzolana, volcanic ash mixed with lime, into the base to create a kind of ancient concrete. It dries slowly, but when it sets, it's harder than your supervisor's heart. You mix a bit under the watchful eye of the crew chief and cross your fingers that this stone stays vertical longer than your last attempt. Carving the letters is the next ordeal. Roman milestones weren't just for directions, they were propaganda. They listed the name of the emperor, the governor in charge of construction, and sometimes how many miles to the nearest major city. Inscriptions might read something like, IMP Caesar Trajanus Hadrianus August Pon Max Tribpot. And if you're lucky, they spell it right the first time. You watch a stonecutter carefully chisel letters using a hammer and a metal point, tapping out abbreviations so tight that even the gods might squint. Misspellings weren't unheard of. Some workers would discreetly scratch out errors and pretend it was wear and tear. Historians still argue whether these milestones were meant for local travelers or imperial messaging. Maybe both. A man passing by on foot might not care which consul ordered the road, but a general? A tax collector? They'd nod approvingly, reading it like a newsletter carved in rock. There's a quirky little fact that tickles you as you rest in the shade. Romans didn't just use milestones to mark distance, they used them to measure everything. All roads were officially measured from a gilded column in the Roman Forum, the Milliarium Reu. Every milestone in the empire traced its number back to that one golden reference point. It's like having a global yardstick made of marble and ego. Someone jokes that if Rome ever vanished, the only thing left standing would be these stubborn pillars. Judging by the way your third milestone of the day resists leveling, they might be right. By late afternoon, your section of road is dotted with 4 new markers, all standing proudly at precise intervals. You watch a passing merchant squint at one and mutter something about being only 11 more miles from the next Mancio. Progress. But the truth is, not all markers go up peacefully. The last one of the day, placed near a slight hill, starts listing before it's even fully embedded. The soil is loose. The wind picks up. And with a slow, tragic wobble, it topples directly into the soup pot. The crew freezes. A perfect silence. And then the cook screams. Not from injury, but because his dinner is now half stone and half lentils. You salvage what you can. The milestone? It'll need to be cleaned, recarved at the base, and possibly exorcised. The soup? It's officially road-flavored. That night, around the fire, the story of the cursed marker becomes instant legend. One guy insists it fell because it wasn't blessed. Another swears he saw a raven land on it earlier, a bad omen, obviously. You just laugh, cheeks sore from grinning. The stars come out. The stones are still standing, gleaming faintly in the moonlight. You imagine, centuries from now, someone stumbling across one of them. They'll read the chiseled names and dates and think, who put this here? And the answer will be, you. Covered in dust, arguing with geometry, and trying not to ruin dinner. You fall asleep wondering if anything else in life could be this annoyingly satisfying. Today, you're doing something different. Not easier, never easier, but different. The main roadbed is finished, the milestones are up, give or take a soup incident, and now it's time to work on what the Romans called spine, the side features. That's right. You've built the main dish, now it's time for the garnishes. You start with drainage ditches. Not the most glamorous part of a Roman road, but without them, the whole thing turns into a very expensive puddle. You're handed a curved shovel, more like a scoop, really, and pointed to the edge of the road, where you'll be carving out gentle trenches that flank either side of the paving stones. The Roman term for these was fossae, and the idea was simple: let the rain roll off the curved center of the road and run into these channels. From there, the water either seeped into the ground or was directed toward nearby streams. Simple, right? Except the soil here is clay heavy, and your shovel feels more like a spoon in peanut butter. Each scoop sticks. Your muscles protest. But you keep going, because without these channels, everything you've built so far will eventually sink, crack, and wash away. An engineer strolls by, nods at your trench, and says, "Remember to taper it." You stare at him blankly. He sighs, crouches, and sketches a profile in the dirt. The ditch should slope gently, deepest near the road, shallow at the edge. Think of it like the shell of a clam. You still don't totally get it, but you nod as if you do. Not far from you, another group is working on curbstones. These thick slabs border the road like bumpers, keeping the paving stones in place and marking the divide between road and ditch. You help lift one into position. It takes 3 people and a lot of grunting. Once it's settled in place, it gives the road a crisp, orderly edge. One that says, "This is no ordinary path, this is Rome." Historians still argue whether every Roman road had curbstones or just those closer to major cities. In frontier provinces, things were often a little rougher. But here, the empire is making a statement. And it wants those edges razor sharp. You take a break under a fig tree, wiping your face with the least dusty part of your tunic. Another worker flops down beside you and points to a small post set off to the side. "Know what that is?" he asks. You squint. "Mile marker?" He grins. "Nope. That's a turning stone." "A what?" He explains. Roman roads didn't have traffic signs, but they sometimes used short cylindrical stones at junctions or sharp turns to encourage carts to pivot cleanly. They also helped protect the curbs from wheel damage. You eye the post again. Huh. It does look suspiciously scuffed around the base. Practical and passive-aggressive. The afternoon heat sets in, and you switch tasks again. This time to work on a Mancio foundation. This roadside inn will one day host imperial messengers, weary travelers, and that guy who always finds a reason to complain about the bread. You mark the perimeter with wooden stakes and help level the ground. The foundation isn't fancy, stone walls on packed earth, but it's sufficient. The Mancio will have stables, sleeping quarters, a kitchen, and possibly a small bathhouse if the budget allows. Luxury, Roman style. There's a fringe detail that sticks with you. Some mansions were known for their menus. We're not talking about 5-star cuisine, but tablets listing available food, cheese, bread, olives, wine, and maybe pickled fish if you were lucky, or unlucky. One traveler once complained in a letter that the cheese tasted like it had traveled from Carthage in a boot. You chuckle. Some things never change. Closer to the road, a few workers are installing sipi, small stone posts sometimes inscribed with legal warnings. Think of them as ancient road signs, minus the neon. One particularly aggressive sippus reads something like, "Anyone who damages this road will be fined 2,000 sestertii and have their cart confiscated." You consider how many chickens that would buy. A lot. As the day wears on, the full picture begins to emerge. This isn't just a road anymore. It's a corridor. A whole ecosystem of features, drainage, edging, markers, way stations, each working together like parts of a machine. Nothing wasted. Nothing random. And it's so straight, it's almost funny. You stand at one end and gaze down the length, and it's like the earth itself has been ironed flat. Somewhere in the distance, a figure on horseback rides toward you, not swerving, not weaving, just gliding, directly along the line your hands helped shape. You wave. He waves back. And keeps going, fading into the shimmering heat. That evening, you eat under the stars near the half-built Mancio. There's talk of a visiting magistrate tomorrow, inspecting the work. Gaius, of course, is panicking about the curbstones not being symmetrical. You offer to help in the morning. As you lie down on a straw mat, listening to frogs croak from the drainage ditch you just carved, you feel something warm and subtle. Pride. This road isn't just straight, it's alive. You wake before the trumpet sounds, already aware something is different. There's a silence in camp, not the usual murmur of shuffling feet and clanging pots, but a hushed stillness, like everyone's holding their breath. The magistrate is coming. Word spread last night. A high-ranking official from the province is riding through to inspect the road, check measurements, review inscriptions, maybe even test the surface with a chariot if he's feeling theatrical. Your crew has been scrambling since before dawn. Tunics have been brushed off. Tools are arranged just so. The cursed milestone, given a fresh rub-down with olive oil and a wreath of flowers, as if hoping to charm its way into forgiveness. You don't have time for nerves. You've been assigned to walk the length of the newly paved section, checking for inconsistencies, loose stones, shallow ditches, cracked curbs. You run your hand along each stretch of paving, eyes squinting against the rising sun. Every flaw feels like it might personally cost you a week's wages. By mid-morning, the sound of hoofbeats echoes down the road. The magistrate arrives surrounded by scribes, guards, and a driver with a cart that looks suspiciously new and suspiciously fast. It's the Roman version of a road test, and you're about to find out whether your section holds up. The chariot rolls forward, bouncing slightly as it hits your stretch. Everyone watches. The wheels click rhythmically along the seams between stones, and for a moment you hold your breath. It glides smoothly. The magistrate nods once. Scribbles something on a wax tablet. His expression is unreadable, but he hasn't started yelling, so that's a good sign. Then, in a surprisingly casual tone, he says, "Straight line. Well graded. Crowned properly. Who's responsible for this segment?" Your name is called before you can pretend to tie your sandal. You step forward, dusty and flushed. He looks you up and down, then points his stylus toward a milestone. "That one's tilted," he says flatly. Your heart sinks. He turns to his scribe. "Note it for correction." You swallow, bow slightly, and step back into the line of workers. No punishment. No public shaming. Just a note. Somehow, that's worse. The milestone might haunt you forever now. Still, the rest of the inspection goes well. The magistrate asks about drainage, applauds the Mancio Foundation, and even samples some bread from the cook's pot. He makes a face but says nothing. Historians still debate how involved provincial officials were in everyday road construction. Some claim magistrates merely showed up for ceremonial ribbon cuttings, while others believe they had real authority and frequently interfered. Today, it feels like both. He's inspecting with care, but you can't shake the feeling that half his job is about appearances. After he leaves, the mood shifts. Everyone exhales. Tools clatter back into motion. Gaius laughs too loudly. The tension breaks like a snapped plumb line. But something about the whole scene sticks with you. It's not just that Rome sent someone to check your work, it's why. Roads weren't just paths, they were the veins of the empire, and every inch mattered. Every stone laid wrong could slow a message, delay an army, or sour the mood of a tax collector. The road wasn't yours. It was Rome's. You just happened to help shape it. You're called away to help fix that offending milestone. Again. This time, you use a more stable gravel mix, reinforce it with fresh mortar, and tap it until it's perfectly aligned. You even offer it a quiet apology. Someone makes a joke about carving your name on it, the builder of the slightly tilted stone, but you wave them off. You're just relieved it's upright. For now. In the afternoon, you're pulled into a task you didn't expect, checking for hidden faults. One of the engineers explains that even a perfect-looking road can hide flaws, thin patches of gravel, water pockets under the paving, or improperly tamped soil. So how do you test it? You bounce. No, really. You stomp along the stones, feeling for a hollow echo. The idea is that if something underneath isn't packed tightly enough, your foot will give you the warning. It's ridiculous, but strangely effective. And weirdly satisfying, like tapping on a watermelon for ripeness, except you're the one who might fall through. A fringe fact you overhear while mid-stomp: some Roman engineers used to drag weighted sleds across finished roads to test their durability. If the sled bounced or scraped unevenly, the surface needed reworking. There's even mention of a governor who had his own chariot modified to record vibrations. You imagine him riding along with a frown and a scroll of complaints. Late in the day, you join a team sketching out future expansion. There's talk of a bridge, a fork in the road, maybe even a spur that leads to a nearby garrison. You help plant marker stakes, each one hammered into the ground with the quiet sense that you're drawing lines for people you'll never meet. Historians like to say that all roads lead to Rome. But from where you're standing, it feels more like Rome reaches out, grabbing land, charting paths, measuring every inch like it's destined to become a map. That evening, you sit beside the road, legs dangling over a dry ditch, watching the sky shift from gold to indigo. You look down the stretch your crew just finished and feel the faintest tremor of pride. This isn't just engineering, it's geometry with ambition. It's conquest with gravel. It's poetry written in stone. And though you'll move on to another section soon, this piece, the stretch between those stubborn milestones, past the Mancio, along the gentle slope, will always feel a little bit like yours. Even if the magistrate never said thank you. The next stretch of road feels different, not in how it looks, but in where it goes. Today, you're walking with the survey team into territory the Romans have only recently claimed. It's quiet. Too quiet. The trees are dense, the birds suspiciously absent, and the local village you passed earlier watched your crew like you'd marched in carrying swords instead of surveyor's poles. Because this isn't just road building anymore. This is expansion. You're laying the line that will pierce into unfamiliar land. And while the paperwork says provincial integration, everyone here knows the truth. The road comes first, the legions come second. In fact, sometimes they arrive in the reverse order. You follow the lead surveyor, an older man named Marinus with a limp and a groma that looks older than Rome itself. He adjusts the plumb lines with the same reverence a priest gives holy relics. The line he chooses today? Straight as always. Even though it cuts through a patch of bog and brushes the edge of a hill sacred to the locals. They'll get used to it, Marinus mutters. You're not so sure. Historians still argue whether local resistance was systematically ignored or delicately negotiated when it came to Roman road planning. In some regions, roads were a sign of imperial favor, in others, a symbol of dominance. Here, in this shady grove where the sunlight can't seem to break through the canopy, it feels like the road is a wedge, opening the forest with each measured step. The land pushes back. The soil is soft and stubborn. Every footstep sinks. Your boots squelch and threaten to disappear. One poor assistant drops a measuring rod and watches it vanish beneath a patch of reeds. You tie your sandals tighter and push on. To combat the marsh, the engineers choose a corduroy roadbed. That means laying thick logs side by side to form a base across the bog, kind of like a wooden raft. You help drag felled trees, young pine and alder, mostly, and wedge them into the mud. It's slippery work, and more than one person ends up sitting in swamp water. It's slow, tedious, and deeply unglamorous. But it works. The logs hold, forming a makeshift floor that can support heavier fill above it. Once dry material is packed over top, it'll look like any other Roman road. But beneath? A secret skeleton of timber and desperation. And here's your fringe tidbit for the day: archaeologists have found some of these ancient log roads still intact, thousands of years later, preserved in peat bogs. Time forgot them, but the mud remembered. Eventually, the path rises onto firmer ground, and you're assigned to scout the terrain ahead. You carry a bundle of red-dyed stakes used to mark future alignments. But even as you plant them in a near-perfect line, you can't shake the feeling that someone's watching. Turns out, someone is. A group of locals emerges from the tree line, quiet and wary. They're not armed, but they carry staffs, baskets, tools, things that say, "We live here." An interpreter steps forward, offering words in a language you don't recognize. The local leader, an old woman with white paint streaked across her cheeks, listens but says nothing. Then she walks to the line of stakes and kicks one over. Hard. Your team freezes. What follows is an uncomfortable standoff. The interpreter tries again. The leader points at the hill. She draws a circle in the dirt, places a pine branch inside it, and stands back. You don't speak her language, but you understand enough. That hill is important. Sacred. And the road is headed straight for it. Marinus frowns. We can curve around it. You blank. Curve? That's practically heresy. He shrugs. Just a bit. A bow in the line. Won't kill anyone. Later, you overhear another engineer grumbling, "What's next? Curvy aqueducts." But the decision stands. You realign the stakes, adjusting the path just enough to skirt the base of the hill. It's still efficient. Still Roman. But slightly kinder. And something about it feels human. The locals eventually leave, their expressions unreadable. No one claps. No deals are struck. But the road continues, not over the hill, but beside it. And that's something. As evening falls, the crew builds a small bridge over a stream that cuts across the new line. It's made of flat planks supported by stone footings. Simple, but strong. You crouch and help wedge a support beam into place, your fingers numb from cold water and rope burns. Every hammer strike echoes into the woods. You glance back at the stretch of corduroy, the curve around the hill, the stakes still standing. The road isn't finished, but its future is visible, etched into the landscape like a promise. Or a scar. You sit on the new bridge and dip your feet in the stream. The air smells like pine and wet moss. Somewhere nearby, an owl hoots. And you wonder, not for the first time, how many people will walk this path. Traders. Soldiers. Diplomats. Children. How many will know about the woman who stood in its way and the engineer who bent the line? Probably none, but you'll know. And the road will remember, too. You wake to rain. Not a drizzle, not a light mist, but a full Roman deluge. Fat, cold droplets hammering the canvas of your tent and turning the camp into a shallow soup of clay and despair. Normally, this might mean a slow day, a little extra time nursing sore knees by the fire. But not today. Today, the engineers are delighted. "It's the perfect opportunity," says one, grinning like a child handed a new abacus. "We can test the drainage system." Of course. What better time to find out whether your beautifully carved ditches actually work than during nature's angry dress rehearsal? You're handed a shovel and a waterlogged hood, then sent out to patrol your section of road. You splash through puddles, noting where water gathers, where it drains too fast, and, more alarmingly, where it doesn't drain at all. Turns out, that patch near the milestone with the crooked top? Not draining. At all. You and Gaius dig a secondary channel, angling it just slightly away from the main path. The rain doesn't let up, and you're soon soaked to the tunic, but slowly, the water starts to shift, trickling into the ditch and away from the road. It's oddly satisfying. It's easy to forget that one of the most revolutionary things about Roman roads wasn't just the straight lines or the paving stones, it was their durability. Roads that could withstand not just soldiers and carts, but time, weather, erosion. This was a network built to last centuries. And the secret weapon? Drainage. Historians still argue whether the Romans learned their techniques from the Etruscans or developed them independently, but the results are undeniable. Roads that don't flood. Roads that don't crumble after the third rainy season. Roads that outlive empires. You follow the water's path down the ditch, where it feeds into a culvert, a small stone tunnel you helped build last week. You remember hauling each stone, setting them with care, brushing clay into the gaps. You crouch and listen as the water rushes through. Still flowing. Still holding. That's Roman engineering for you. As the rain slows to a drizzle, you're sent to inspect the auger, the raised embankment that supports the road bed. This particular stretch was built atop loose soil, so it was elevated to improve visibility and help runoff. Now, you're looking for signs of slippage or settling. So far, so good. Except for one section that started to sink. Not dramatically. Just enough to make the paving stones dip ever so slightly, like a frown in the road. You mark it with a chalked stone and flag it for reinforcement. Another day, another correction. You break for lunch under the shelter of a half-built mansio. The rain has turned everything to mud, but the cook has somehow conjured hot lentil stew. You eat hungrily, your spoon clinking against a bowl that smells vaguely of rosemary and regret. Someone nearby shares a fun, slightly soggy tidbit. During the reign of Emperor Claudius, road crews were sometimes paid extra in wine rations if they hit their monthly quota. You glance at your bowl and wish your spoon scooped wine instead of lentils. After lunch, the rain clears completely, revealing a sky washed clean. The road steams, giving off the scent of wet stone and pine. You walk your section again, this time with a bundle of reeds used to sweep debris from the ditches. You feel a little ridiculous, like a Roman janitor for the gods, but it's important. If the channels clog, the road fails. You find a clump of pine needles damming one of the side trenches and scoop it out with your hands. Water rushes forward, smooth and clean, like it had been waiting. Later, You work with a crew adding gravel to the shoulders of the road. This isn't for show, it helps stabilize the edges and prevents erosion from eating away at the base. You rake and tamp until your arms hum. A supervisor stops by and praises the drainage pattern. Textbook Roman, he says with a smile. Just imagine, this road will carry wheat from Gaul, glass from Syria, and gossip from every legionary who ever twisted an ankle walking it. And you grin, because you already know the stones remember more than footsteps. As evening sets in, a cart lumbers down the freshly tested stretch, the wheels cutting soft grooves into the still damp gravel. You watch it sway slightly, then correct, the driver flicking the reins with practiced ease. The road holds. No pulling, no cracks, just movement. That night, the stars come out crisp and clean. You lie back on the pile of straw, eyes on the constellations, and think about all the rain that tried to erase your work, and failed. The road held. And so did you. Tomorrow, you'll be back in the ditch again. Or leveling gravel. Or smoothing curbstones with a damp cloth and a bad attitude. But tonight, the empire rests a little easier, because someone made sure the water knew where to go. You begin the day with sore muscles and a strange sense of anticipation. Because today isn't about laying more stones, digging more ditches, or arguing over the correct angle of a drainage slope. Today is about testing. The section of road you and your crew have labored over for weeks is officially complete. It stretches from one ridge to another like a gray ribbon pulled taut across the land. Straight, raised, crowned, ditched, paved, marked, and swept clean. Now comes the final phase before it's handed over to the next group, the test runs. The first trial involves pack animals. A dozen mules, loaded with sacks of grain, amphorae of wine, and bundles of firewood, are herded down the road in a staggered line. You watch them closely, noting where hooves slip, where cargo wobbles, where loose stone might cause a stumble. There's a brief moment of chaos when one mule stops mid-walk, stares directly at a milestone, and then proceeds to relieve itself beside it. Gaius snorts. Rome's newest form of protest. Once the animals pass inspection, the next test is mechanical, carts and wagons. Historians still debate whether Roman roads were designed primarily for foot traffic or wheeled vehicles. Some claim the paving stones were too uneven for long-term cart use, others argue that wear patterns on surviving roads clearly show heavy chariot traffic. You're about to find out for yourself. The first cart rumbles forward. It's wooden, iron-rimmed, and loud, so loud you feel it in your teeth. But the wheels hold to the road. The stones don't shift. The cart creaks but doesn't bounce. Success. Then comes the heavy transport, oxen pulling a large wagon loaded with masonry blocks. The kind of cargo you'd only move if you were building a forum, a fortress, or a very dramatic bathhouse. You watch as it starts down a slope. The oxen strain. The wagon groans. A few paving stones protest, squeaking under the weight. But they don't crack. You exhale. Later, you're asked to walk a section again, this time with a surveyor who checks alignment with a long taut cord. See this? He says, pointing. A perfect line. He hands you the cord. Your turn. You stretch it tight between two stakes. No sag. No curve. The line hovers above the road like a spell. You feel strangely proud, as if the cord is acknowledging your effort. A French story floats around during lunch. There's an old tale of a Roman engineer who was so obsessed with straight roads that he ordered a team to build a causeway through a swamp rather than detour a single degree. The road took 3 times as long and nearly drowned 2 crews, but when finished, it was arrow straight. The engineer, legend says, wept with joy. You believe it. The afternoon's test is for speed. A legion courier arrives on horseback, armor polished and scroll in hand. He's here to do what messengers do best, ride fast. He gallops down your section, hooves pounding, dust flying. You count the seconds as he disappears into the horizon. A rider like him might carry orders from the frontier to Rome in days, not weeks, all thanks to roads like yours. When he returns, he nods approvingly. Smooth ride, he says. Not even sore. You resist the urge to bow. The final test is the water bucket test. It's exactly what it sounds like. A soldier is tasked with carrying a full wooden bucket of water along the road, walking, trotting, then running, without spilling more than a quarter of it. The idea is simple. If the road is too uneven, the water will slosh out. If it's well made, the surface will absorb motion without jostling. It seems silly at first. Until the bucket returns, only slightly lighter. Applause breaks out. Someone throws a wreath over the test walker's head. He pretends to accept it like Caesar returning from Gaul. As the sun lowers, a small ceremony takes place. Nothing fancy, just a scroll read aloud by the overseer, declaring the section fit for public use, followed by a symbolic first walk along its length by the magistrate's assistant. You and your crew follow behind, heads high, boots thudding softly on the warm stone. You can't help but look back. The road stretches behind you in a perfect, unwavering line. From here, it looks endless. You know it's not, but the illusion is delicious. And maybe that's part of the genius. Roman roads weren't just built for utility, they were built for vision. To make you believe that wherever you were going, you'd arrive eventually. That the empire was present, even in the wilderness. That there was a path, and it would hold. That night, your crew celebrates modestly: bread, lentils, a little wine, and a lot of sword toasts. Gaius gives a speech, which mostly consists of "we did it, and I only broke 2 fingers." You sit at the edge of the newly opened road, feeling the last heat from the paving stones against your legs. The stars blink overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks. A cartwheel squeals. And you think, this is the beginning of someone else's journey. They'll never know your name, but they'll walk steady. There's something haunting about returning to an old road. A few weeks have passed. You've worked a different section, laid a few more milestones, even helped patch a bridge near a small coastal town. But now, you're back. Assigned to inspect the very first stretch you helped build, your road. The straight one. The stubborn one. The one with the milestone that almost drowned in soup. It looks different. Used. There are wagon tracks now, shallow grooves in the gravel, boot prints, hoof marks, and the occasional discarded olive pit. The once pristine ditches have collected bits of straw and wind-blown leaves. A patch near the edge is stained from a spilled amphora, probably wine, judging by the smell and the trail of dark purple. But the road holds. Every stone is still in place. The slope still channels water perfectly. A courier passes you at a brisk trot, nods once, and disappears without slowing. There's a quiet satisfaction in seeing it this way, working. You feel like a parent watching a child ride a bike for the first time without wobbling. Then someone calls your name. It's a junior engineer with a list in hand. "We've got a few repairs flagged by passing officials," she says. "Nothing big. Just maintenance." Ah yes. Maintenance. The part of roadwork no one brags about. You're sent to address a section where a curbstone has shifted slightly. Probably a cart brushed it too hard. You pry it loose, damp down the gravel beneath it, and reset the stone. It's tedious, but weirdly meditative. Nearby, a local farmer approaches. He's got a donkey tied to a pole and a basket of onions in one hand. "You the road crew?" he asks. You nod. "Tell whoever's in charge they did it right. My boy can get to market in a day now. Used to take 2. That's a good road." You smile. Sometimes, that's enough. Later, you help inspect a milestone with an inscription that's started to fade. Turns out the stonemason used a softer limestone for the lettering, a shortcut that's already backfiring. You and another worker carefully re-etch the missing lines, tracing over the original Latin as if you're restoring an old poem. "Decius Valerianus IMP average." You mutter it aloud as you carve. The emperor's name. A date. A distance. It's like breathing life back into a statue. Historians still argue about how frequently roads were maintained, and who exactly paid for it. Local magistrates? Imperial funds? Private citizens hoping for favor? The answer is probably all of the above. What you do know is this: once a road is born, it needs constant care. Abandon it, and the wilderness creeps back in. And it does creep. You're sent to clear a landslide that's partially buried a short section just beyond a bend. It's minor, but you can already see weeds trying to grow between the stones. Nature doesn't wait for politics. You shovel dirt, remove loose rocks, realign a paving slab that had twisted out of place. When you're done, the road looks like it did on day 1, almost. You take a break under a cypress tree and spot something curious: a small stack of stones carefully balanced on the edge of the curb. Not part of the construction. Someone made it afterward. Probably a traveler. Maybe a superstition. Maybe a message. Gaius would have knocked it over just to see if it was cursed. You leave it alone. In the afternoon, a traveling performer sets up a show by the roadside. He juggles wooden balls, tells stories, plays a reed pipe. You stop for a moment, watching children gather to laugh and clap. The road is his stage. Fringe tidbit of the day: there are records of entire traveling circuses using Roman roads to tour the empire, hauling cages, tents, instruments, even bears. Bears. You try to picture one lumbering past you as if late for a performance in Gaul. As evening settles in, You finish your final inspection. The sun hits the road at an angle that makes the paving stones shimmer. They look like coins spilled across the landscape. You know the whole line by heart, every milestone, every slope, every place where the earth pushed back and you pushed harder. And as the stars blink awake, you realize something. You thought the hardest part of building a road was making it straight. But the real challenge? Keeping it true. You're on the move again. This time, the road leads you toward the mountains, tall, jagged things with white streaked caps and low-hanging mist that clings to your face like a damp towel. The air is thinner here, colder. Your breath fogs as you climb. And yes, you're still building straight roads. Sort of. See, Roman engineers weren't foolish, they knew better than to try and plow a perfectly straight line through a mountain. But they didn't zigzag unless absolutely necessary. Instead, they'd trace the most direct feasible route, skimming ridgelines, hugging contours, even tunneling where needed. So today, your crew is cutting a path along the side of a steep slope. It's narrow. It's crumbly. And one wrong step could mean a very quick descent and a very awkward funeral. You anchor ropes, swing picks, wedge stones. The work is less about brute strength now, and more about balance, carving footholds into rock, finding stable places to stand, setting retaining walls to keep the mountain from reclaiming your progress overnight. Every time you move a boulder, it feels like the earth growls at you. And yet, the line continues, measured, aligned, and painfully determined. The Romans had a term for this, parmontes. Through the mountains. They were proud of it. When they weren't bragging about how many aqueducts they built, they were probably boasting about how they carved a road through terrain that made goats nervous. You pause to watch a chain of donkeys navigate a completed portion ahead. Their hooves click on the stone with rhythmic certainty. The path is only wide enough for one animal at a time, and each one follows the other with blind trust. You wonder if the same could be said of the empire. Historians still argue about the logistics of mountain road construction. Some say local labor was forced into the work. Others believe skilled stonemasons were brought in from afar, paid handsomely for every cliff they conquered. The truth is probably both, and more. All you know is that the mountain doesn't care who you are. It resists everyone equally. Your crew builds a retaining wall to support a ledge. Large boulders form the outer edge, smaller stones packed behind, then layered with soil and compacted by foot. It takes all morning to build just 6 feet of secure surface. When done properly, the wall blends so seamlessly into the landscape it looks like nature meant for it to be there. But you remember the sweat, the strain, the sheer amount of rope. Later, you help widen a precarious turn. The engineers decide it's too tight for larger carts, and there's no room to go outward, so you go up, chipping into the rock face with hammer and chisel. Bits of shale flake off with each blow, bouncing down the slope like tiny gray birds. A fringe tail circulates as you rest for water. Some Roman roads had designated prayer spots at dangerous turns, small altars or shrines where travelers could offer a quick plea to Mercury, Fortuna, or whatever local deity was in charge of not dying on narrow paths. You pass one, a squat little column with faded carvings. Someone's left a coin on top. You do the same. The views are unreal. Far below, you see valleys stitched with farmland, and farther still, the glint of a distant river winding like a silver thread. The road you're building? It snakes upward, then disappears around a high shoulder. You follow it, legs burning. Eventually, the crew reaches a pass where a tunnel will be cut. That's right. A tunnel. Through solid rock. You don't get to dig it, you're not qualified, but you help with staging, setting up scaffolds, prepping tools, marking the alignment so the exit emerges precisely where intended. One mistake, and they'll carve themselves into a dead end or worse, 2 tunnels that almost meet but never quite line up. A stonemason mutters, "We've done it before. We can do it again." You don't know if he's reassuring you or himself. As the sun dips low, the temperature plummets. Your fingers are stiff, your face wind-chapped. But the road, incredibly, continues. Every ledge conquered. Every drop of sweat frozen into the stone. And through it all, the line never really bends. It shifts slightly, follows the land's spine, but the spirit of the straight line persists. Forward. Always forward. You pause at a high ridge to catch your breath. Below, the road you've built winds down toward a valley where smoke curls from a small settlement. You imagine a caravan arriving there, a trader from Hispania, perhaps, or a soldier rotated from Britannia. They'll roll into town, warm from the journey, road dust in their boots. And they'll never think about the wall that holds the road in place. The stones cut by hand. The rope burns. The tunnel that almost didn't meet. But you'll know you built this and the mountain didn't win. You've reached the sea. It stretches out in front of you like melted glass, painted with streaks of sun and wind. The air smells different here, saltier, cleaner. The road you've been building for months finally meets the edge of the world. Or so it seems. Because this is not the end. This is where it connects. The final segment of the road leads directly into a port town, busy with activity. Carts loaded with amphorae roll toward the docks. Sailors shout in half a dozen dialects. Nets hang drying in the breeze. And down the stone path you helped shape, goods from the interior flow outward: wine, oil, textiles, rumors. In return come spices, glass, exotic animals, and letters from home. Rome's roads don't just move armies and taxes. They bind together corners of an empire so vast it sometimes forgets how far it reaches. You're assigned to a final duty here, overseeing the transition zone where the road ends and the port infrastructure begins. That means smoothing the junction between dry land and dock, leveling stones so carts don't jolt as they load or unload, and marking waypoints for traffic flow. It's not glamorous work, but it matters. A centurion rides in from the north. His horse clatters onto the pavement, breathing hard. He hands a scroll to a clerk, dismounts, and strolls toward the docks like it's just another Tuesday. You recognize him. He passed your crew weeks ago, just outside the ridge near that curving shrine. You remember because he complained loudly about the bumps in the road. Now, he says nothing because the road held. Historians still debate whether port cities were designed to match the roads or vice versa. But what's clear is that every Roman road, no matter how humble, was part of a greater choreography. Even the most remote track could link to a major artery, and from there to Rome itself. That's the magic. A road in the Alps. A bridge in Gaul. A curve through the marshes of Britannia. All pointing inward. All belonging to something far larger than a single engineer's vision. And yet, here you are, watching a fish cart roll across a milestone you once reset with your bare hands. A fringe detail. In some coastal outposts, Romans built customs posts at the end of roads to collect tolls or taxes on goods coming in. You walk past one now, just a squat stone booth with iron bars. But inside, a scribe is busy tallying crates. Ink-stained hands. Cold eyes. The road doesn't end at the sea, it simply changes forms. You pause at the last marker, an inscription chiseled deep into the stone, Via Maritima. Constructed under the order of the Senate and people of Rome. You run your hand across the letters. You helped build this. Not just the paving. The permanence. The crew is smaller now. Some have moved on. Others stayed behind to maintain stretches you'll never see again. But the ones still here gather that evening by a fire on the beach. Gaius roasts something unidentifiable on a stick. Someone passes a skin of wine. Someone else sings a tuneless sea shanty until everyone begs him to stop. And you sit there quietly, watching the waves, wondering how long it'll be before the next road calls. Because there will be another road. That's the secret no one tells you when you first pick up a shovel. Roads are addictive. You start by laying gravel, and before you know it, you're chasing the horizon. You think back to the very first milestone. The one that tilted. The soup. The crooked-eyed supervisor who doubted your plumb line. The moment the magistrate rode over your paving stones without flinching. All of it, every ache, every absurdity, every glimmer of pride, has brought you here. To the edge. To the connection. To the proof that a road, no matter how straight, can carry more than just weight, it can carry meaning. And now, as your last duty, you light the final marker torch. Its glow reflects in the waves. And then, very gently, you let go of the day. The waves roll in, soft and even, brushing the edge of the dock where the road ends. You sit quietly, feeling the warm stones beneath you still holding the last of the sun's heat, long after the fire has gone out. The night deepens, slow and quiet. There's no more shouting from the crew, no carts clattering down a slope, no orders barked across a worksite. Just the sea, breathing in and out, steady as the beat of a distant drum. The road behind you gleams faintly in the moonlight, winding back through hills and forests, towns and fields, past shrines and milestones and crooked stones that once caused sleepless nights. But from here, it all looks gentle. Soften your eyes, and it could almost be a thread spun across the land, tying everything together. And you rest. The wind picks up slightly, cool and salty, rustling your hair and whispering across the flagstones you helped lay. The sound is soothing, like parchment turning, like linen folding, like the hush that falls in a temple after the prayers have ended. You breathe in, exhale. No more stones to carry. No more ditches to dig. Just the memory of the road, long and sure, stretching through time and space like a promise. Wherever someone walks, you've made it easier. Wherever someone dreams of travel, you've paved the way. You close your eyes, the hum of the night wrapping around you like a warm blanket, your heartbeat steadying with the rhythm of the earth beneath you. The road is finished, and you can finally rest.
Lấy máy là quay gỡ cho anh Thịnh. Thì chớp chớp nhán nhán được rồi. Dàn tới đây luôn á. cái máy là quay gỡ cho anh Thịnh.
Quay nó không có đỏ đâu, không quay không phải nó không có đỏ. Máy xịn kìa chứ máy này quay đâu.
Thì chớp nhán được rồi. Dàn tới đây luôn á. lấy máy là quay gửi cho anh Thịnh.
Quay nó có rõ đâu, không quay như vậy. Không có rõ. Máy xịn kìa, chứ máy này quay đâu.
Thì chớp chớp nhán nhán được rồi. dằn tới đây luôn á. Lấy máy là quay gửi cho anh Thịnh.
Quay nó có đỏ đâu, không quay nó không có đỏ. Má xịn kìa, chứ má này quay đâu.
Thì chớp chớp nhán nhán được rồi. Dằn tới đây luôn á. Lấy máy là quay gửi cho anh Thịnh.